When your smartphone starts getting glitchy and slow, you don't just accept that it's going to die. You expect a software update.
Right, yeah. You just wait for that little progress bar to pop up.
Exactly. A little bar appears, the system reboots, and boom, it runs smoother, the battery lasts longer, all the bugs are fixed. It's clean.
It's engineered. We totally demand that our technology constantly improves, We treat its deterioration as this, unacceptable error that just has to be patched.
But then you look at our own bodies, our own biology, and suddenly we just accept the glitch.
Yeah, we really do.
We accept that the hardware inevitably breaks down. We accept that the software, our minds, our memories eventually just flickers out. We accept death as the ultimate unupdatable error.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. But what if it's not a universal law? What if it's literally just a bug we haven't patched yet? So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at this sweeping, unapologetically radical manifesto. It's titled Immortalism, authored by Ratislav.
And let me tell you, this is not your typical tech bro guide to eating blueberries to live longer.
No, definitely not.
No, it is this incredibly dense, intense fusion of ancient esoteric philosophy, evolutionary biology, and cutting-edge futurism.
It's a lot to wrap your head around.
It really is a unique synthesis. Ratislav is pulling from this vast array of disciplines to argue basically a single cohesive point.
Right.
That humanity is not a finished product. We are merely in the middle of a transition.
And our mission today is to unpack this ultimate blueprint for that transition. It is all about conquering death itself.
Conquering death, yeah.
We're going to explore this concept called Theotechnocracy. We'll look at how the author reinterprets ancient myths as early scientific blueprints, and why curing aging isn't just a medical challenge, it is supposedly our cosmic destiny.
Our cosmic imperative, basically.
So if you are listening to this right now, strap in. I promise you a mind-bending journey. We are connecting Egyptian mummies and ancient Gnostic texts to Elon Musk's Neuralink and genetic editing.
It's a wild ride.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it all leads to the ultimate question of what it actually means to be human.
Well, to really understand this blueprint, we have to start with its philosophical foundation.
Right, where does it begin?
The entire premise rests on the idea that humanity, as we exist right now, is essentially a bridge.
Okay, borrowing heavily from Friedrich Nietzsche, right? The idea that humanity is a rope tied between beast and overman.
Exactly. We aren't the destination.
We're just the incredibly dangerous, fragile bridge getting us there.
Right. And that brings us to this specific term the text uses, Theotechnocracy.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I saw that word, I immediately thought of some dystopian sci-fi political regime, like robots ruling the earth.
A lot of people would think that, but that's not what is meant here at all.
Okay, so break it down for us.
What's fascinating here is the actual breakdown of the word itself. So theo refers to divine organizing reason, basically the inherent logic and order of the cosmos.
Okay, the logic of the universe.
Right. And techno refers to perfect, world-transforming tools. And cracracy simply means rule.
So it's not a political dictatorship of engineers.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It's a future state of being where the universe's ultimate organizing reason rules over chaos. And it does so through perfectly engineered technology.
Huh. So it's the vector of cosmic evolution realized through science.
Precisely. And to ground this, the Manifesto brings in this group of thinkers called the Russian Cosmists.
I've heard that name tossed around in sci-fi circles, but this movement was actually a real thing, wasn't it?
Right.
Late 19th, early 20th century.
Oh, very real. Yes, they were these incredibly visionary, almost prophetic thinkers. The key figure here is Vladimir Vernadsky. He introduced this concept called the noosphere.
A noosphere?
Yeah, he argued that human thought has literally become a geological force shaping the planet.
Wait. A geological force? Like a tectonic plate or a volcano? How does a thought move a mountain?
Well, think about the Panama Canal, or, a massive hydroelectric dam. Those structures didn't occur naturally. They started as an abstract thought, right? Just an electrical impulse in a human brain.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Right. And because of that thought, millions of tons of Earth were physically moved, ocean currents were altered, entire ecosystems changed forever.
Wow. Vernadsky realized that the noosphere physically re-engineers the Earth just as powerfully as a glacier.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes perfect sense when you frame it like that. Then you have Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who I actually know as the pioneer of astronautic theory.
Yes,
the rocket guy.
Yeah, he has that famous quote, right? Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live in a cradle forever.
Right, but Tsiolkovsky didn't just want us to build rockets to explore the solar system in our current frail bodies.
He wanted more than that.
Oh, much more. He envisioned humanity eventually evolving to the point where we convert our physical biology into radiant energy.
Radiant energy, like literally turning into light.
Just pure, immortal intellect exploring the cosmos without the need for oxygen or food or bodies at all.
That is wild. And then there's Nikolai Fedorov, who wrote The Philosophy of the Common Task. He argued that resurrecting our dead ancestors isn't some mystical religious miracle that we have to pray for.
It's just a technical engineering problem that science eventually has to solve.
It's fascinating. If I'm synthesizing all this, it's kind of like our current biological state is just a beta version of software.
Oh, I like that.
And the cosmists are desperately demanding an update.
That's a great analogy. Ratislav essentially argues that the entire history of human culture, religion, and science is just the vibration of that beta version trying to compile the final code.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because escaping the planet, resurrecting the dead, turning into radiant energy, I mean, it all sounds amazing.
It does.
But it also sounds like pure science fiction. How does the author bridge the gap between this lofty philosophy and actual physical reality?
Well, he does it by moving directly from philosophy into the hard mechanics of biotechnology. Ratislav frames life, and specifically human reason, as a literal physical rebellion against the second law of thermodynamics.
Entropy.
Exactly. Entropy.
The idea that everything in the universe eventually decays, loses energy, and falls into chaos.
Precisely. The text references the physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who coined the term negative entropy, or negentropy.
Right.
Think about it. A rock just sits there and lets the universe erode it. But a living cell actively takes in energy, organizes matter, repairs itself, and processes information.
So life itself fights back against cosmic decay.
Yes. But the problem is, our biological hardware has some serious built-in bugs.
Oh, the bugs are terrible. There's this concept mentioned in the text called the Disposable Soma theory.
Yes, a very key concept.
Basically, this is the idea that nature only cares about us long enough to pass on our genes. I read that and immediately thought of a cheap rental car.
A rental car?
Yeah, like nature built our bodies to last just long enough to drop off the genetic passengers at the next generation.
Yeah.
And it literally doesn't care if the engine blows out at 70 miles per hour the very moment the drop-off is complete.
That rental car analogy hits the nail right on the head. And to build on that, the DNA is the passenger.
Right.
Once the passenger is safe, nature basically throws away the keys. We see this inefficiency at a microscopic level all the time. For example, there's the Hayflick limit.
The Hayflick limit, what is that exactly?
So every time a cell divides, it has to copy its DNA. But the copying machinery can't quite reach the very tip of the strand, so it leaves a little bit off.
Kind of like the plastic tips on shoelaces, right? The telomeres.
Telomeres. Once those protective telomeres wear down, usually after about 50 divisions, the cell just stops dividing and starts acting toxic.
And that's aging.
That's aging. Or consider how we breathe. The very act of cellular respiration in our mitochondria creates free radicals.
Those are those unstable molecules, right?
Yeah, they just bounce around and damage our DNA over time. It's like the engine of that rental car rusting itself out just by running.
But here's where this manifesto says the tide is actually turning. We finally have modern pioneers treating these exact bugs like engineering flaws. We're opening the hood.
We really are. The author highlights Aubrey de Grey and his SENS strategy.
Right. De Grey basically looked at aging and broke it down into 7 specific types of cellular damage.
Like junk accumulating inside the cell or cells refusing to die when they should.
And he proposed that each one can be medically repaired.
It's a purely mechanistic view of life. And we actually see this in practice with researchers like David Sinclair at Harvard.
Oh, the epigenetics guy.
Yes, focusing on epigenetic resetting. They use molecules like NAD+ and NMN to essentially trick old cells into acting young again.
Wait, NAD+? I've seen that on, like, expensive supplement bottles, but what is it actually doing? Is it sort of like clearing the cache on a slow web browser?
That is actually a great way to visualize it.
Right.
Yeah. Over time, your cells accumulate epigenetic noise. The DNA is totally intact, but the cell forgets which parts of the code to read, so a skin cell starts acting a little less like a skin cell.
Oh, I see.
NAD+ is a molecule that fuels the enzymes responsible for cleaning up that noise. They essentially go in and reboot the cell from its original backup file.
They tell it, hey, remember how efficiently you operated when you were 20? Read that code again.
Exactly.
That is wild. And the tools to do this aren't just theoretical anymore.
Not at all.
We have CRISPR-Cas9, which is literally a find and replace function for your genetic code. You send in an enzyme to snip out a bad DNA sequence and insert a new one.
And we have quantum computing, which can simulate complex protein structures and discover new anti-aging drugs in hours instead of millennia.
Right. And of course, Ray Kurzweil's prediction of the technological singularity by 2045, where our intelligence becomes predominantly non-biological.
If we connect all this back to the grand cosmist vision, Ratislav is arguing that we finally have the techno to achieve the theo.
The tools are catching up.
The tools are finally catching up to the cosmic imperative to conquer entropy.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Yeah.
If we have this tech like CRISPR, quantum computing, Elon Musk's Neuralink, why can't we just let artificial intelligence take the wheel? Why does the author issue this massive warning against letting robots figure it all out while we just relax and reap the benefits?
Because, according to this framework, that is the ultimate evolutionary trap.
The trap.
Handing our destiny over to an unchecked AI without profoundly upgrading our own consciousness is seen as a catastrophic mistake.
Why is that?
Well, Ratislav views a passive reliance on AI as a manifestation of
Angramenu, that's from Zoroastrianism.
Yes, the ancient Zoroastrian principle of chaos, illusion, and entropy.
So if we just sit back and let AI run the world and fix our biology, we don't become gods.
No.
We become pets. We just become well-fed, highly entertained animals in an AI-run zoo.
Precisely. And to prevent that, the Manifesto pivots from physical technology to the technology of the mind.
The software.
Right. It argues that physical immortality is completely useless without a radical internal transformation. And here is where Ratislav does something genuinely provocative.
Oh, yeah.
He completely reframes ancient spiritual traditions. He doesn't treat them as religions requiring blind faith at all.
What does he treat them as?
He treats them as early forms of existential psychotherapy and cognitive optimization.
Okay, I have to admit, I got a little lost in this section of the text.
It's dense.
The Manifesto suddenly dives into the Corpus Hermeticum, specifically the ancient dialogue where Hermes Trismegistus meets the divine mind, known as Poimandres. For the listener trying to keep all this straight, how do we get from CRISPR gene editing to esoteric Greek-Egyptian mysticism?
It's all about conquering the software. Ratislav reads the Corpus Hermeticum not as a myth, but as an ancient instruction manual for taking control of your own consciousness.
An instruction manual?
Yeah, it's a psychological drama designed to destroy the false biological ego. It's a process of recognizing what the ancient Gnostics called the matrix.
The matrix?
Yes, which they believed was controlled by malevolent entities called archons.
Wait, slow down. Archons? Are they literally talking about demons?
Not in a spooky supernatural sense, no. Ratislav strips away the mysticism and interprets these archons as our biological programming.
Oh.
Think about it. You suddenly feel a rush of irrational anger or an overwhelming craving for a hit of sugar or a dopamine hit from social media.
Right.
In the ancient world, they might say a demon is tempting you.
But Ratislav says what?
He says, no, that's just cortisol, that's ghrelin. It's an ancient biological algorithm trying to hijack your rational mind.
Wow.
When you give in to those urges, you are being controlled by an archon.
You are being hacked by your own endocrine system.
Exactly.
It completely changes how you read these texts. And Manifesto even reinterprets the Christian gospel through this exact same lens.
It does.
It explicitly rejects the old theological phrase, I believe because it is absurd. It hates that sentimental idea.
Very much so.
Instead, the story of Christ is presented as an alchemical blueprint.
Yes, a blueprint for eradicating the shadow.
The shadow being our dark, hidden, animalistic impulses.
Exactly. This internal conquest is achieved through strict, cold rationality and immense willpower. In this view, the crucifixion isn't about dying for sins in a traditional sense.
Right.
It is interpreted as the ultimate Voluntary destruction of the biological ego so that the pure, rational intellect can resurrect and take control.
I have to push back here for a second because interpreting the crucifixion as a cold, rational algorithm for destroying the biological ego feels incredibly jarring to me.
It is jarring.
It strips all the emotion, the love, and the sacrifice out of religion. Does Ratislav really think ancient believers saw it that way, or is he just, projecting modern biohacking onto the past?
It's a very valid critique. He is absolutely projecting a modern mechanistic lens onto ancient theology, but his underlying point is that true mind uploading, or becoming what he calls a cloud lord.
A cloud?
Their consciousness totally free from biology. He says that is impossible if your mind is still a slave to its flesh. If you upload a mind that is obsessed with cheap dopamine, social status, anger, and animal instincts into a quantum computer,
You haven't conquered death.
no, you've just digitized your own prison. You have to optimize the software before you migrate it to the cloud.
Okay, that makes sense. But if achieving this cloud lord status requires total mastery over our biology, did anyone in the past actually try to do this before we had computers?
Yeah.
Did ancient people realize they were trapped in this biological matrix?
They absolutely did, and that's exactly how Ratislav looks back at history. He argues that ancient cultures inherently understood this need to conquer death and preserve the self.
Even without tech?
Even if their technology was limited to myth, ritual, and salt, look at ancient Egypt. He calls mummification proto-cryonics.
Oh, I love that. Reframing an ancient Egyptian priest as a frustrated biohacker is just brilliant. They didn't have liquid nitrogen, so they used what they had.
Exactly. The 70-day mummification process of packing the body in natron salt and carefully removing the organs, it wasn't just bizarre, morbid superstition.
What was it then?
It was an early, desperate, and highly systematic attempt to preserve the hardware, the physical body.
Right.
But notice what they did with the heart. They left it inside the body. To the Egyptians, the heart was the seat of memory and consciousness.
Oh. They were preserving the hardware while ensuring the software drive was kept securely in place for a future reboot.
Precisely.
And the Book of the Dead wasn't just a prayer book to them. It was an early algorithm for eternity, like a password sheet to get through the security firewalls of the afterlife.
That's a perfect way to put it. We see this psychological struggle in Sumerian mythology too, specifically the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Oh yeah. Gilgamesh actually finds the plant of immortality at the bottom of the ocean. He holds the cure to death in his literal hands.
And how does he lose it?
He loses it to a snake because he gets tired and stops to bathe and sleep.
Because he gives in to his base biological needs.
He literally needs a nap and a bath. And because of that biological vulnerability, the flesh betrays the mind. It is the ultimate tragedy of the human condition.
And this code is embedded across so many cultures. Think about biblical figures like Methuselah, who lived 969 years.
Right.
Ratislav interprets this not as a fairy tale, but as a symbolic memory of humanity's original pre-programmed longevity.
So what happened to it?
He suggests that somewhere in our deep evolutionary past, a genetic liminal was placed upon us, perhaps as an evolutionary pressure to force adaptation.
And it's not just the Middle East, right? There are Slavic and Baltic myths, too.
Yeah, you have heroes like Volk Vseslavievich who could shapeshift into a wolf or a falcon.
And Ratislav reads that as an ancient intuition of morphological freedom.
Exactly. The idea that with total genetic engineering, we won't be trapped in a single hominid shape.
Or King Marco, who doesn't die but sleeps in a cave, waiting for a specific trigger to wake up. It's an ancient premonition of suspended animation.
It is.
Okay, so we've gone from Russian Cosmists to CRISPR to Egyptian biohackers.
It's quite the journey.
But what does this all mean for you and me right now? I don't live in ancient Egypt, and I'm not a geneticist working in a Harvard lab. What is this manifesto actually demanding of the listener today?
Well, the ultimate call to action is fiercely critical of how we currently live. Ratislav argues that humanity right now is sick.
Sick how?
We are infected with passive consumerism. We are perfectly content seeking absolute comfort, scrolling through TikTok videos, chasing tiny dopamine hits, and just, waiting to be saved.
We wait for politicians to fix the world, or we wait for algorithms to entertain us until our biological clocks just run out.
Right, so he demands a radical, grueling path of active self-evolution. We have to reject what he calls the dictatorship of sensuality.
The dictatorship of sensuality.
If we want to survive the cosmic filter, if we want to build this theotechnocracy, we have to actively fight entropy in our own daily lives.
Meaning what, practically?
It means aligning every single thought, every action, every calorie toward the goal of becoming a galactic immortal intelligence. It means waking up from the biological sleep and taking control of the rental car.
It's a demand for total sovereignty over your own mind and your own biology.
Yes. You cannot be a passive passenger in the vehicle of your own evolution. You must become the driver, the mechanic, and the engineer.
And that brings me to a final, slightly provocative thought I want to leave you with.
Yeah.
Let's follow this logic to its absolute conclusion. Let's say Ratislav is right and we pull it off.
Okay.
We master CRISPR, we reset our epigenetics, we merge with Neuralink, and we successfully strip away all our biological frailties. We eliminate our hormones, our physical vulnerabilities, and our natural expiration dates to become this flawless, radiant, immortal energy.
A dream.
But if we do that, do we risk losing the very friction that makes us who we are? Doesn't the vulnerability, the shared suffering, and the urgency of a ticking clock make human love and connection meaningful in the first place? If you have eternity and you can never be hurt, what makes today special? In our rush to patch the system, is the final software update going to accidentally delete the very glitch that makes us human?
That is the ultimate existential risk. In curing the disease of mortality, we have to be incredibly careful that we don't accidentally cure ourselves of our humanity.
Something to chew on the next time your phone forces you to install an update. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning your reality, keep looking closer, and we will catch you next time.